A common claim you see amongst leftists and liberals is that anybody who thinks outside of their ideology is somehow motivated by hatred or fear. This is all part of what I term progressive moral theology. It's a pseudo-religion, really. It Disneyfies the world into simple concepts of good and evil and ignores complicated issues. As you may have noticed, the leftist ego and the leftist psychology is rooted in the idea that they are good. They are rooted in some sense of universal love. Now, while this leads to all the nice-sounding cliches and platitudes we see everywhere in the modern world today, things such as love is love, in reality it's rooted in a sort of narcissism. This is why leftist liberal ideals tend to appeal to the sheltered, the naive and the young. It's also why they engage in lots of cringe, a cringe they can't see, by the way, when elections come around. They really think things like this are meaningful and are going to get people going. That's right, you get that toxic white male out of here. Sorry for putting you through this level of cringe, but you see what I mean by Disneyfication. The whole thing seems like the dream of how the world should be to some 25-year-old feminist who's struggling to grow up and is still at college with a wine drinking issue. But no doubt all the people in this video would assume they're motivated by some sense of love and justice and that their opponents are full of hate. But is that actually true? Well, here's an American couple being interviewed after the recent election result, and I thought we'd break down their claims.
Deflated.
Devastated.
Disappointed.
Distraught.
Cannot believe our fellow countrymen.
And goddamn democratic.
Quite the double act, aren't they? It's like they've rehearsed that one.
We're not done. We're going to find out how to resist this. We might have to have our own militias now. And the midterms, just watch out, we're coming.
Militias? Bloody hell, in the last clip she said she was democratic, and now she doesn't like the outcome of a democratic election. She wants to start an armed insurrection. It is this type of incoherence that we're going to see a lot more of. Next up, they're asked why they think Kamala Harris lost the election.
Racism and sexism. Very plain. That's the backwash that Obama suffered. And again, it's fear of the other in people who don't understand that we're better off connected. That's the pivot that I was waiting for in this election, that we would discover that we were connected more than separated. I'm still holding out for it, but it's a huge blow.
For the unaware, this talk of the other is classic leftist ideology. It essentially means anybody outside of a given in-group. In the leftist context, it would be white Western males, and that person is viewed as suspicious and even oppressed and ostracised by the system unfairly. It naturally follows then that it's part of the leftist project to ignore external differences, things such as culture, country you're from, ethnicity, gender and so on. These all need to be seen as illusions while we recognise the utopian equality of us all under the liberal project. The only problem is that hasn't worked at all. In fact, all it's served to do is undermine the very liberalism that liberals supposedly believe in. Take, for instance, this report from UNICEF. They say after the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan, more children are at risk of forced marriage. So am I othering the Afghanis when I state that this practice is wrong? Well, yes, I am. But more importantly, am I morally wrong to other the Afghanis for this sort of behaviour? Anybody from a Christian or post-Christian culture would see this as wrong. We know that children should be left to be children. People can get married when they're adults and are ready to make that decision for themselves. However, even stating that would be quote-unquote othering certain groups. After all, some of the groups that have come into the Western world still practice arranged marriages. Here's another example. This is from India. At the end of Diwali, here's a bunch of men, hundreds if not thousands of them, having a massive fight with cow poo. Yeah, charming, isn't it? Now, I understand every culture has their wacky traditions. I'm from Leicester originally, and out in the countryside there, they have an annual battle where two villages fight it out to get a barrel of beer to the other village. As you can see, it can get quite violent and fights do sometimes break out. However, do I prefer this to the cow poo throwing? I've got to say, I do. For starters, it seems a lot more masculine. It's part of an ancient tradition which keeps the villages alive. And on top of that, it's not involving any feces. After all, putting your hands in feces, throwing it at people, getting it in your mouth, that just can't be healthy. They also have a tradition in India which seems to involve trying to get blessings by throwing your toddler onto a heap of cow dung. This is horrible, this clip. The poor kid knows it shouldn't be thrown on dung and is very upset about it, and rightly so in my opinion. Now, do I say any of this because I hate that Indian child, because I fear the Indians and their cow poo beliefs? Of course not. And it's not hateful either to notice that the more people we invite from different parts of the world, the more odd cultural practices that don't mix with ours we're going to discover. And this leads us to the major realization that counters the argument of our leftist friends. That is, life isn't about having no boundaries, about never othering, but where we draw the correct boundaries for the flourishing of our own culture and the people therein. This is also why I'm not pro the actions of the Blair Bush liberal authoritarian types who believe they can just go and explode Iraq into little pieces, and eventually what will come from the ruins is a people who love Eurovision Song Contest and pride marches and the rest of it. In essence, I may not agree with the actions of other people in different parts of the world, but it is their land, it's their culture and their people, and I should leave them to it. However, that means I also believe the same for the West. Europe belongs to the Europeans. Western culture should be prominent in the West. Again, that doesn't mean I hate other people from different cultures. I can respect and even love all people from different cultures, recognizing that we're all in the spirit of God. But that also means that I don't have to turn my back on reality, and I can view the world as it is. When we tend to ignore innate differences between cultures and peoples, we create a lot more chaos than we do harmony. But to the modern leftist, none of that matters. If I commit the supposedly grave sin of othering, I am evil.
I grew up in Germany, Hamburg, and in Germany, in our schools, we were taught and shown what our ancestors did. They did not question authority, i.e. fascism came about because the people did not move. They did not fight.
It taught Germany some beautiful lessons that makes Germany the progressive country it is.
As we learn again and again from leftists, if you think outside of the progressive ideology, you are immediately a far-right extremist, fascist, genocidal maniac. But if this guy is so well versed in Germany's history, you'd think he'd know that Hitler didn't just wake up one day and think, you know what, I hate everybody who's not Northern European white and I want to start a massive war that kills tens of millions of people. Hitler's rise came on the back after mass national humiliation, economic destruction due to the Treaty of Versailles, and his promise to restore the value of Germans. So if these leftists want to avoid such politics, you might want to avoid the idea of humiliating people for their race, for their culture, for their background, for their gender. This is what the leftists have been doing in the West for way over a decade now, and it's very dangerous. I'm not saying that because I want World War III. I'd prefer peace, but that depends upon people respecting each other's cultures and having the right boundaries in place. If you don't respect the ancient culture, the tradition that holds a people in place, that anchors them in stability, then things fall apart. These are just my thoughts. However, do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.